An example I often give is the Indus Valley civilization in Pakistan and India. The Indus Valley civilization, nobody actually knew that it existed until it was accidentally discovered while a railway was being built through a site now called Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan. And then they found that there were these actually very, very sophisticated, very complex mud brick structures on a very large scale.
In the midst of the Sindh desert, where the Indus River cuts through, there lies a city that shouldn't exist, where every brick, every street obeys a geometric law far beyond the intellect of ancient humanity. That is Mohenjo-Daro, the 4,500-year-old city once buried by time under the sands of Pakistan. But when reconstructed using LiDAR and 3D GIS technology in 2024, it left the entire archaeological world speechless. Not just a well-planned ancient metropolis, it operates like an algorithm. Every street mirrors the entire city, a perfect self-replicating model, as if programmed millennia ago. That is fractal geometry, and Mohenjo-Daro may well be humanity's first urban brain, according to analysis from the ETH Zurich AI Urban Lab. When zooming in on individual clusters of streets, the planning model maintains ratios of 1, 2, 3, 4 identical to the model of the whole city, like a living structure, where each part reflects the whole. No one can believe that? Around 2600 BC, people who hadn't yet discovered metal, the wheel, or writing could erect a metropolis that functions like a nervous system. LiDAR maps and drainage data reveal that Mohenjo-Daro's underground sewer network operates like a circulatory system, branching and self-regulating flow, a form of urban biotechnology predating the Romans by thousands of years. The more we analyze, the more we see calculations hidden in every brick. The main roads deviate exactly 7 degrees from north, matching the flow direction of the Indus River. House walls and drainage paths have slopes that decrease in cycles following the golden ratio. Some experts call this ancient geometric intelligence a form of understanding about energy order, resonance, and flow that modern science is only beginning to explore, as if the Indus people didn't build the city to live in, but to regulate the Earth's energy. But what baffles everyone the most is how that precision repeats not random, without error. AI calls it a third-order fractal, a level of complexity equivalent to neural structures or biological data simulations. In other words, Mohenjo-Daro is like a living organism, programmed to maintain balance between humans, water, and land. What could have enabled a pre-metal civilization to grasp such complex geometry? The Indus River was once the lifeblood of the civilization, but for Mohenjo-Daro, it was also an axis of energy. When an international team of geophysicists reconstructed the terrain using LiDAR and hydrological data, they discovered something unexpected. The entire city deviates exactly 7 degrees from north, perfectly matching the river's direction. This deviation cannot be random. It is the trace of a deliberate alignment, as if the Indus people built the city to synchronize with the natural flow of water. Their drainage system proves it. Every house has its own underground drain, connecting to main channels running along the streets, then merging into larger flows emptying into the river, all designed with gradually decreasing slopes, precise to the point that modern GIS models simulate it still functioning smoothly after more than 4,000 years. No pumps, no metal, just gravity, angles, and geometry. When scientists applied fractal analysis to the hydraulic maps, they found that Mohenjo-Daro's network of sewers and drains is self-similar to the structure of the Indus River itself. Small branches repeat the proportions of larger ones, following the same distribution laws identical to fractal hydrology models that modern geophysics only named a few decades ago. Some experts believe the Indus people didn't just build to resist floods, but to harness the resonant energy of flowing water. The sound of water rushing through narrow channels creates low-pressure oscillations, accelerating the flow, a phenomenon akin to the Helmholtz effect described by modern science in the 19th century. On a physical level, the entire city operates like a body with its own pulse, where every street, every watercourse carries the same rhythm. Not just drainage engineering, it is a geometric symphony where water and land resonate to sustain life. Mohenjo-Daro doesn't just sit beside the Indus River, it is written in the language of the river itself, as if the people back then learned to hear the Earth's whispers and turn them into architecture. In 2023, the ETH Zurich AI Urban Lab teamed up with Pakistani archaeologists to digitize the entire map of Mohenjo-Daro. They wanted to create a model for preservation, but the data they gathered revealed something no one anticipated. When the AI system began analyzing the network of streets and structures, it detected a structured self-similarity, repeating at 3 different levels: residential areas, districts, and the whole city, all sharing the same spatial ratios, as if everything was designed according to a single principle. The algorithm calls this fractal coherence a level of geometric similarity that only appears in systems optimized for self-balance. When the 3D images of Mohenjo-Daro were projected on screen, the researchers fell silent. From above, the city looks like a gigantic semiconductor chip. Every alley a miniature copy of the larger street. Every cluster of houses recreating the overall shape of the city. A third-order fractal model, rare even in modern design. Physicists compare the complexity of this structure to biological neural networks. They realize that the average distance between traffic nodes matches the synaptic linkage ratios in human brain models. AI calls this urban neural pattern a form of geometric thought network, where information, water, and people move like electrical impulses in the brain. This raises a question that forces archaeologists to rethink every assumption. Did the Indus people unconsciously mimic a natural form of thinking? Or did they truly understand the organizing principles of life, where everything from cells to rivers follows the same laws? The mathematicians on the ETH Zurich project fed the Mohenjo-Daro model into deep learning AI systems. The result? The city demonstrates self-balancing energy capabilities in simulations, like a network striving to maintain optimal order. This cannot be coincidence. With over 40,000 inhabitants, any small error in planning would lead to collapse, yet the city endured for centuries. With that precision, Mohenjo-Daro is not just an ancient city, it is a living geometric machine, designed to operate in harmony with natural laws long before modern humans could comprehend living in a fractal model. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro, amid the labyrinth of streets and sun-baked brick walls, stands a structure that makes archaeologists pause even when they think they've understood it all. A rectangular pool, lined with baked bricks and bitumen still intact after more than 4 millennia. The Indus people called it sacred. Modern scientists call it the Great Bath. At first, it was thought to be merely a ritual site, a place for purifying baths. But when engineers reconstructed the pool's dimensions using laser scans in 2022, something strange emerged. The ratio of length to width is 1.618, a number perfect to the point of suspicion. That is the golden ratio, a constant appearing everywhere in nature, from the spirals of seashells to the way sunflowers arrange their seeds. No one can believe that 4,000 years ago. A civilization unfamiliar with formal mathematics could build according to a ratio only studied in ancient Greece much later. The more they measured, the more archaeologists realized the golden ratio isn't just in the Great Bath, but repeats in the layout of the entire city. Housing blocks, distances between main and secondary roads, even the spacing of steps down to the pool, all fall within the range of 1.6 to 162. Some physicists call this resonant geometry, geometry of resonance. They argue the Great Bath isn't just a ceremonial site, but the city's energy center. When hydroacoustic teams from the University of Karachi tested sounds within the pool, they discovered, when filled with water, the pool's volume and depth produce resonant frequencies around 110-112 Hz, the same range recorded in other sacred architectures, from Karnak Temple in Egypt to the Hippodrome in Malta. This frequency is believed to induce brainwave synchronization, leading listeners into expanded states of consciousness, a kind of transcendental experience that ancient civilizations may have deemed sacred. Acoustics experts noted that when wind blows through the stone corridors and water oscillates gently, the Great Bath emits very low hums, almost inaudible, infrasound, vibrating below 20 Hz. This is the same frequency range that many other ancient religious structures around the world created, whether accidentally or intentionally. These sound waves don't just affect the human body, they can also vibrate water surfaces, creating geometric wave patterns matching the pool's own ratios. Some researchers call it geometric ritual, where shape, sound, and water merge into a single entity. And that is what makes the Great Bath the resonant heart of Mohenjo-Daro. Plane scan data from ETH Zurich shows that when the first morning sunlight hits, the shadows of the surrounding walls slide exactly along logarithmic spirals, the hallmark of fractal geometry. In other words, light is part of the ritual too. The city was designed not just for living, but for sensing, for interacting with nature's energy. Professor Jonathan Mark Kenoyer, who has spent over 3 decades studying the Indus civilization, once said, "The Indus people didn't seek to dominate nature like the Egyptians or Babylonians, they sought to dialogue with it." That statement explains it all. The Great Bath isn't a symbol of power, but of balance. Every drop of water falling into the pool doesn't just cool the body, but touches a deeper principal harmony between humans and the structure of the universe. Modern mathematicians, when mapping the energy flow of the Great Bath, discovered wave propagation from the pool's center creates Fibonacci spirals, a form of wave that maintains stable harmonic ratios without dissipating energy over time. This leads to a bold hypothesis. The Great Bath isn't just a bathing place, but a natural energy resonator where water, sound, and geometry unite to maintain balance for the entire city. If true, then Mohenjo-Daro isn't just an advanced ancient metropolis, it is a geometric symphony, where the ancients built not just with hands, but with the intelligence of resonance. And the Great Bath, the heart of that city, is the first beat still echoing today. When announcements about Mohenjo-Daro's resonant geometry spread internationally, the archaeological community split into two clear camps. One side believes this is evidence of geometric thinking ahead of its time, showing the Indus people understood natural order deeper than any contemporary civilization. The other side argues it's all modern misinterpretation, a way for today's people to read scientific meanings into things that were far simpler. Professor Cameron Petrie, University of Cambridge, is one of the strongest skeptical voices. He argues that the self-similarity in the city's layout could be the natural result of grid planning, not a product of fractal mathematics. An ancient city, if built large and rationally enough, will naturally generate repeating patterns, because that's how humans divide space for living, not because they understood advanced geometry. And the 1.618 ratio in the Great Bath, he says it's just coincidence, nothing mystical. But the ETH Zurich research team disagrees. They point out that the fractal patterns in Mohenjo-Daro aren't randomly distributed, but organized cyclically, following 3-4 rules between lengths, widths, and orientation angles precise enough for computers to simulate energy resonance. One geophysics engineer from the team stated bluntly at a 22 at a 2025 conference, if this is just random, then random is behaving like a brain. Mathematicians call this the fractal intent hypothesis, the idea that the Indus people didn't need formulas, but they sensed the laws, perhaps through observing water, wind, and the natural rhythms of the Indus River. That's no different from how the Egyptians aligned pyramids with stars without trigonometry. They sensed the order, even if they didn't name it. However, there's one point both sides agree on. Mohenjo-Daro cannot be entirely random. With the precision in drainage design, the repeating ratios down to individual house blocks, the city's stability in a harsh environment for centuries, there must be a hidden principle behind it. The question is, does that principle belong to human intuition, or to an ancient knowledge long forgotten? Adding to the controversy is another detail no less debated. In some artifacts excavated from the eastern part of the city, archaeologists found ivory pieces etched with parallel lines and regular proportions, like geometric measuring tools. One of them, called the ivory scale, has divisions precisely at 1.32 inches, with an error of only 0.005 inches compared to modern rulers. This suggests the Indus people may have possessed sophisticated measuring instruments, and if so, their geometric coincidences suddenly become harder to dismiss than ever. Pakistani archaeologists view the issue differently. They argue that debating whether the Indus people understood fractals is a westernized perspective, forcing an ancient civilization to fit modern scientific standards. For them, Mohenjo-Daro's geometry doesn't need to be technology. It's an expression of a philosophy of living in harmony with nature, not separate from the environment, but part of it. In a 2024 interview, anthropologist Dr. Sana Qureshi said, "Perhaps we're asking the wrong question. Not how did they do it, but why did they do it that way? Because maybe, for the Indus people, geometry wasn't mathematics. It was a prayer in bricks and water." Though the debates have no end in sight, one thing cannot be denied. The deeper we peer into Mohenjo-Daro, the more modern humans see themselves the patterns, systems, and algorithms we think are new, already etched into the ground thousands of years ago. And perhaps, as we try to decode that city with machines and data, we're forgetting that some knowledge doesn't need to be written down, it just needs to be felt. Amid the sun-scorched ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, no words or inscriptions remain, only structures, precise and silent, like the memory of a civilization that understood natural order better than we do. This city was not built to dominate, but to coexist. Water channeled to the rhythm of the Indus River, houses oriented to the wind, and streets repeating their own patterns like a self-organizing organism. The Indus people seem to understand that sustainability comes not from control, but from harmony. Today, as AI algorithms reconstruct Mohenjo-Daro, they discover this urban network behaves like an ancient nervous system where every part reflects the whole, true to the fractal principle that Mandelbrot only named thousands of years later. If Göbekli Tepe is a prayer in stone, then Mohenjo-Daro is a symphony of geometry where architecture, water, and light blend into the same rhythm. Some scientists call this nature's fingerprint, and perhaps, also, the first fingerprint of human intelligence. Now, in the age of AI and data, the message from Mohenjo-Daro still echoes. True order doesn't lie in technology, but in the ability to listen to the universe. A city that once lived with the river, with the wind, and perhaps still breathes in the very metropolises we think we've invented.